Hello and welcome to this Kerbal Space Program video. Today we're going to be sending this Saturn V that you see being built before your eyes to the Mun. It's going to be an Apollo style in case you haven't guessed, and right now you see me putting together the command service module, and this will be the bit that holds our astronauts for most of the time going to and from the Mun. We've got monopropellant tanks, some batteries and an RPG to keep our power up. Then you see me putting the fuel lines from the tanks to the service module. They're important to make sure you actually get the fuel to your engines, so I'm just using the Wolfhound and a high gain antenna to make sure that we have a connection to Kerbin. And now we're putting together the Munar excursion module. This is quite simple. It's a two-stage lander. We're going to put some gold panels on it in a minute. There you go, just to make it look a little bit more like the Apollo lander. It's not very octagonal, but it is gold. And now we're having a ladder, not really necessary for the Mun. Our Kerbals can use their EVA packs, but just save fuel, I guess. I don't know. Launch escape system. This was a bit annoying because the shroud, you have to have that detach when you jettison the launch escape system, otherwise it stays attached to the rest of your rocket for some reason. I'm not too sure why. It's only done it since the 1.10 update for console. It was perfectly fine before, so I just set it to jettison the fairing, although you don't see me doing it here in the build. Now we're putting together the S4B. This will take us to the Mun and also pop us into orbit. Now the second stage of our Saturn V, using the 5-meter parts, the largest in the game if you have the Making History DLC, which will unfortunately be necessary if you want to recreate this mission yourself. So this is the interstage with the Separatrons to get us away from the first stage you see being built now, with 5 Mastodon engines, which of course are Kerbal Space Program's analogue to the mighty F1. And now we see the launch. Liftoff. Now the raw power of our Saturn V as it climbs upwards towards space. We have Jeb, Bill and Bob, you see on the right hand side. Jebediah is our mission commander. Bill will stay in the command module orbiting the Mun, and Bill will come down to do some science activities, although we are playing in sandbox mode, so the science is not really necessary. So we are getting higher and higher and faster. You see our gravity turn. What I aim to do is get to 45 degrees before we reached 10,000 meters. This helps us conserve fuel by not just going straight up, but also we're not spending too much time wasting fuel by burning in the more soupier parts of Kerbin's atmosphere. We're approaching the first stage flame out, and nearly there we go. First stage separation, the interstage gone for the second stage. Little explosion there, but that's KSP for you really. The launch escape jettison, you might have seen little bits of fairing coming off there, which, as I said earlier, helps it actually, not stay on, because that might hinder docking a bit if we don't have our docking port uncovered. And we're going to be aiming for a 100-kilometer apoapsis or thereabouts. Now, time warping up, separating our third stage, which is going to put us into our orbit of Kerbin, our parking orbit as we get ready to go to the Mun. And nearly there for the ignition. and just waiting to get to our manoeuvre node. You need to burn half before the node and half after to optimise your time. So if you've got a 10-second burn, you want to start at T-minus 5 seconds to your node. And we have achieved orbit. So now you see me planning out our Munar insertion burn. This is the burn that will get us our encounter with the Mun. And see me trying to get it right. We don't want our third stage to just be flung out into space. We're going to aim to have that crash into the surface of the Mun after we've detached it. Now warping around. If you click on the brown line which shows you where you'll be after your burn, you can select warp to next manoeuvre, which is handy if you need to wait a few orbits to get something done. It will do all of that automatically for you. And I would tell you how long our burn is, but I've got quite a small preview window in this, which is slightly annoying. We have, there we go, that's our encounter with the Mun. There we go, making sure that our third stage will end up crashing into the Mun. So we don't want any debris being left in space, apart from the second stage of our lander, but we'll just ignore that. So now we have transposition and docking. This is where our command and service module will detach from the rest. It will spin itself around and extract the lunar module. So we have Jebediah at the controls. Pulling away so we get enough clearance to don't end up knocking into it when we turn ourselves around. Extending that antenna. And we'll spin ourselves around. And we are now docked. So we have LEM extraction here. And there we go, we are now free from our third stage. And this will be where, this will be our journey to the Mun. So, just adjusting to make sure that we don't crash into the Mun, because that wouldn't be a good idea. I'm sure our Kerbals families would not enjoy that. And here we've reached the Mun. So I'll be planning out our burn to get us into an orbit of the Mun, so we don't end up flinging ourselves back into deep space, and we won't be stuck in a solar orbit for an infinitely long amount of years. So our Kerbals can now gaze upon the Mun. So we're now in orbit of the Mun, transferring our crew over from our command module to our lunar module. As I said earlier, we have Jebediah Kerman as our mission commander, and we have Bob Kerman, who will be performing science experiments when we reach the surface of the Mun. I'm going to make sure that we descend on the light side of the Mun to give you plenty of light to view their surface antics. And we are now descending quite quickly towards the Mun. We will need to cancel off a lot of our velocity in order to descend nice and safely to the Mun, to make sure we don't crash into it. I've picked a nice relatively flat spot of the Mun, which makes it easier for us to land. So slowing down, and we want to have as little horizontal velocity as possible, which just makes it easier for us when we're landing, so we're not skidding along the lunar surface. Slowing down, less than 10 meters per second now, and coming in a little quicker than I would have liked, but we survived with a slight bounce. SCS is disabled and re-enabled for some reason, and shut down our engine. There we go, we're on the Mun. We get Commander Jebediah out on EVA. It's one small waddle for a Kerbal, one giant fall for Kerbal kind. So an EVA report, it's probably saying something along the lines of it's a bit dusty here, and planting the flag of our space program. Just typing in our landing site, so if we visit again we don't want to be visiting the same place. We'd want to go somewhere else on the Mun. Now we see our scientist, Bob Kerman. He'll perform some more surface experiments, picking up some surface samples, EVA report and stuff like that. So then waddles back over to our lander, get a nice screenshot, send a postcard back home, and now Bob Kerman decides that he wants to stand on top of our lander using his EVA jetpack. See, it's quite easy to use the jetpack when on the Mun, as it has quite low gravity. Not as easy on Minmus, or especially somewhere like Gilly, where you could jump a Kerbal into escape velocity. So now Bob's finished playing around on top of the lander. It's time for Jebediah to climb back inside, closely followed by Bob, so they can meet up with Bill and redock with the command module. So we want to make sure that our command module is ideally on top of us when we launch, although I was a bit overly happy with our time warping. I did leave it a little bit too late. So we have time warping round and round until it reaches above us. There we go, see, overshot it a little bit. Now what I'd normally do is full throttle and then press the spacebar or A if you're on Xbox like I am, and that would ideally separate the first and second stage. So it didn't really happen, so I had to do it again and just wait for the first stage to run out of fuel. Yeah, that could be something to improve on, but see, we're flying flat pretty much straight away, which is the most efficient way to ascend from the Mun. We don't need to start off going upwards as much as we did on Kerbin, because the Mun doesn't have an atmosphere. We're not fighting anything apart from gravity. So now we are approaching to dock with the command module, and our Kerbals have now been transferred to our command service module and planning our Trans-Kerbin Injection burn. This is the burn that will get us back home to the blue marble that is Kerbin, so I can whack them on another rocket and send them somewhere else in a few days' time. You know, we don't really like them to get too accustomed to Kerbin, because it's just more effort. They have to spend more training if they stay on Kerbin for large amounts of times. So yeah, approaching our manoeuvre node. As I said earlier, you want to burn half before and half after your node, which makes it as efficient as possible. And there we go, that's our Trans-Kerbin Injection burn. Done it low enough in the atmosphere so we won't be orbiting Kerbin more than once in order to re-enter. However, it is still high enough so the heating won't be too much for our heat shield. However, KSP's ablative heat shields are a bit overpowered. You could get away with shaving off quite a bit of the ablator from this heat shield. Then that reduces your mass, making your mission slightly more efficient. However, we did have enough margin. The Saturn V that we built earlier does have way too much fuel for the job. The YouTuber Matt Lown took a Saturn V all the way to Tylo and back, which just proves the scale of the KSP solar system when compared to our own. Like the gas giant Joule is a little bit smaller than Earth, which just puts into scale how small the KSP solar system is, and also the challenges faced by real life scientists when it comes to sending probes into deep space, or even in the 60s sending people to the moon, as America did, and as this mission is a somewhat recreation of. I wouldn't call it an exact replica, but there you go. If you've enjoyed this video, make sure to give it a like. If you want to see more things like this, subscribe and ring the bell notification to make sure you stay up to date. And thank you for watching. Goodbye.